Excited to go over this master class today. Something I'm super passionate about because, like I said before, I have made a bunch of mistakes early in my investing career. And I just want to make sure that doesn't happen to anyone else, right? Or at least you guys go in with full eyes open. Quick background if you don't know who I am. So, obviously I came from a mindset that I was taught and thought that success was just having a great W-2 job, having a nice house, maybe a nice 401k. So really did that route in life and really found out that, I don't know, I was really in this active income life where I was trading all my time and energy for money and really did not like what I was spending my time on. Came from tech. It was one corporate meeting after another corporate meeting after another corporate meeting. And, I just really wanted a life that I could look back at and just be super proud of, right? And that really wasn't, what I felt was happening at that time. So, looked up online, if there was even a possibility, right? And, found real estate. And, I'm sure like a lot of people on this call was immediately smitten on the idea of like, whoa, that sounds really awesome. But probably also like, whoa, I'm overwhelmed. It's like a different language. And, I proceeded to get my butt kicked a few times and made a bunch of mistakes and did what I like to call fail forward. On our very first deal, if you know us, like we were a private money loan on a flipper in San Francisco, lost 100K. That was basically all our money at that time. So that really sucked. But, use that as a learning lesson and just kept on going forward, right? And every time that we got knocked down, we just got back up and like took that as a learning lesson. Really to a point where, we've been blessed now that we built our portfolio up to about 230 doors. We have 150 unit under contract as well. And just been super blessed. But I think more importantly, I get to spend time on what we call passion, right? Passion income, which could be, retreat centers and focusing on mental health and helping charities and things like that. And really just giving back and empowering people, right? To take this journey as well, because it can be scary alone, right? If you don't know what the heck you're doing. But it can be very empowering, right? Once you can do it and inspire, your own friends and families that, hey, it is actually very possible. Right. And, that's something that we have found to be super passionate about and why we're, doing calls like this is that, yeah, like we want to be able to give back to everyone else. Right. And again, like I said, hopefully guide you guys around the landmines and at least do what we can to help out there. So quick disclaimer, of course, all information here is educational and informational purposes only. So not, any kind of financial or investment advice, just things that I've come across in my own experience in life. So here are the things that I'm going to go over in class. So what are the 5 principles, right? So 1 is knowledge, right? Knowledge is power. Knowledge is everything, right? That's going to give you the confidence to actually go take action. 2 is buying rights, right? So I think a lot of people will get to this, but a lot of people just, I go on Riffin, I'll try to look for a deal there. That isn't where you're going to find the deals. Hate to break it to you. 3rd is defining multiple exit strategies, not just one. Look what's happening, to a lot of short-term rentals right now. 4, this should be common sense, but apparently it's not. Make sure it cash flows, right? So cash flows, you can hold it forever. And if you hold it for a long time, real estate usually goes up. And 5 is don't over leverage. Real estate's a long-term game, right? Like as long as you don't get knocked out, you're going to be fine, right? So how can you stay in the game for as long as possible and look back at everything and say, all right, great, we did this. So, this is not things that I want you to have. These are things I need you guys to look at, right? To make sure that you guys are de-risking your deals. These are all check boxes I still do to this day, and I just want to make sure I share. So obviously in the next hour here, I'm going to share as much as possible. I'm going to open it up for questions. If you guys have questions along the way, feel free to put them in the chat. Some of this information is going to be freaking overwhelming. Some of it's going to be like, oh, okay. Or some of it's going to be, just invigorating what you already know. Hopefully it's going to make a huge impact on your guys' life. So, and again, if you guys ever need any additional support and help, I'll definitely make sure to have a Q&A at the end, and where you can also reach out to us as well. So, type 1 in the chat if you're ready and excited to learn today. All right, thank you, Josh. Thank you, Mara. All right, so you caught the bug, like I said earlier. I had such a light bulb moment when I found out that there is a way. There's a way out of it, right? I don't know if you guys have felt the same way, but I just kind of felt trapped, right? I was like, all right, like, I guess this is my life. I'll just work forever, maybe a couple of years, I'll get my, 3 to 5%, promotion, and I'm just in that life forever. And when I found actually the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? Raise your hand if you've ever read that book before. It freaking turns your whole world upside down, right? You're like, oh crap. Okay, that's maybe how you do all this stuff. And I don't know, I felt like Neo from the Matrix, right? Taking that red pill for the first time and seeing the world. And I don't know, anyone that's ever felt, like excited about real estate, they're like, all right, like, and I was so excited about the concept. I was like, I'm gonna go buy a bunch of assets and no liabilities, and that's just what I'm gonna do. And I was like so excited to get in. Then I was like, oh crap, there's a lot to do in real estate. There's a lot of questions I don't know, right? There's like, what market to pick, what kind of asset do I pick? Is it a good deal? Is it a bad deal? Is this the right time? Is there going to be a recession? Are interest rates going to be high? Like, are we going to go to World War V? We're like, I don't know, right? And I got stuck in an analysis paralysis stage, like I'm sure a lot of people have. But more importantly, I look back and what I found was that I was just scared of the unknown because I had never done it before. And that was what was the main thing that caused me to just not take action. I was just scared, right? But the closer you get to fear, the smaller it gets, right? And so I don't know, type of two, if you've ever felt that way, where you're like, oh man, I want to get in them. I just don't know what I don't know, right? I know I did a lot. And so first part, guys, principle number one is just knowledge on knowledge. Let's arm you guys with knowledge so that you guys can feel the confidence, feel the empowerment to actually go out and take action, right? It's the same thing as, I don't know if you guys who know who this guy is, but this is Iron Mike Tyson, right? And in his prime, you would never step in that ring, right? But you would definitely not step in the ring if you've never boxed in your life, right? Maybe if you're Brianna and you are a jiu-jitsu master, right? You can go in and feel okay. But if you ever boxed before, there's no way I'm stepping in the ring with Mike Tyson. Actually, even if you boxed before, there's probably not a way. But extreme example, same thing with real estate investing or investing in general, right? Like if you never practiced it or knew how to do it, you're not going to know how to do it, right? So the thing is, practice it on the back end, right? Where it's safe, right? Where you can actually just run the numbers and like look at a deal and say, all right, like, is this working? Is this, what did I find from my research before? Is it matching the data points that I'm looking at? And I like to say it's really about avoiding the HGTV effect. Who here has watched HGTV? Right? Who here? Raise your hand. I love it. I love the shows on there. I always say avoid the HGTV effect, meaning that HGTV makes it look so freaking easy, right? Hey, in half an hour you can flip a home and make 6 figures. That is not how it works, right? They're missing a lot of steps in between, a lot of headaches around contractors and operations and systems that you just don't know, right? And I call it the HGTV effect because some people's whole education is I watch flip this house. I know everything, right? You gotta just do it, and then you hire some contractors and they do it, and you make a bunch of money, right? And I've seen so many people just be like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna go invest there, right? I'm gonna go invest in Waco, Texas, because HGTV was there, right? And I could flip homes there and stuff. But that's not always the case, right? Those are professionals, right? You just don't see a lot of the back end stuff. So what I like to say is being a real estate investor means actually educating yourself on all the steps along that way, right? And what that means, more importantly, is knowing your numbers. Now, I'm telling you right now, I guarantee you 90% of the people on this call probably don't like numbers and looking at spreadsheets, right? But for my 10%ers out there, it's great because you know how to, you can look at a story with numbers. Now, for the 90% that don't like numbers, what I'd say is, yeah, numbers suck. Numbers aren't fun, but they are necessary to understand, right? Because that's what's going to tell you the whole story about your deal, right? As if you're like Lisa, you're an agent with Twin Oaks, right? So as an agent, when you're guiding your clients, it's 90% what? It's 90% emotion, right? Because that's the house they're going to live in, and 10% logic. In investing, you're going to flip that on the opposite side. It's 90% logic and 10% emotion, right? And meaning that, does the numbers actually work, right? Is this a market that actually makes sense, right? What are the interest rates? How's that affecting my deal? What are the different loan options I have, and how's it affect my exit strategy, right? So I think knowing your numbers, not a fun thing, but necessary, right? If I were to ask you, just like if you ran a McDonald's business franchise, for example, and you don't know how many burgers you sell a day or a week, or you don't know how much your potatoes cost, you're probably not going to be in business very long, right? And so I would challenge every single person, even in your own personal life, outside just real estate investing, even knowing your own income and your own expenses of your personal life. If you don't know what that is, I would challenge you all on this call, if you had one takeaway, is to start just tracking that, right? It may not be fun to look at in the beginning, but what it does is it gives you more control, more empowerment of your own life, right? I can't tell you how many people I've worked with that said, oh, I've never really looked at it, right? And they're like, I don't even know, right? I don't want to look, I'm scared. But then they look, you're like, okay, that was a little scary, but now I know. And now I know what I have to do, right? To do stuff. Same thing here. If you just are making decisions about real estate investing like this, and you're saying, oh, I should go invest in Waco, Texas, because that's where Chip and Joanna do it, and I'm going to do that. Then, there's no data behind that. You're not doing it with, an actual strategy. You're just going 100% feel on that. So challenge all you guys where that is with market analysis, right? Whether it's analyzing a deal, right? Whether it's looking at all different like loan-term options. So that can be a big effect, right? Even little things like, what should I go that loan or that loan? Well, let's look at the closing costs. Let's look at the interest rate. Let's look at, what the term is, if there's a prepayment penalty, things like that. All that stuff is very important to understand when you're making your decisions, right? Make data-driven decisions, familiar yourself with what all the options are. That's number one. But two is like, hey, you don't have to do this alone. I think the number one mistake that people make is that we all feel like, we're in this by ourselves. No one else cares. But the thing is, people do care, right? This is a team sport, right? This isn't, Max Verstappen, versus the world. This is basketball where you need to be all on the same team to go do this, right? And so, how you can do this, you can build a network of professionals that are there for you that can also provide valuable insights and support, right? So people that are in the field as a real estate agent in that market that you've never visited before. Maybe it's a lender that's been in business for 10 to 15 or 20 years, right? That knows every kind of loan product out there, right? And if you can explain to him what your exit strategy is, maybe he can suggest a loan product out there that you don't know even exists, right? And now you're starting to work with fire, right? Property managers. I can't tell you how many times that I haven't listened to a property manager because I was so in my own head, right? And that bit me in the butt, right? But they're professionals. And I always hear all the time, the quote unquote, how do you invest out of state? It's scary. I've never been to San Antonio, Texas. I've never been to Huntsville, Alabama. I've never been to 50% of the properties we even own, right? But like what I always find is like we use a trust and verify type of method where we build a team out there, and I trust what the agent says, but then I verify it, right, with a property manager. I trust that the contractor said that he finished the work, but I'm going to verify with my property manager going in and checking, right? And as long as you don't give me a reason to not trust you, then I will always trust you, but I always will checks and balance you as well, right? And what that does is like that equals accountability as well. But if you can leverage that, right, and leverage their expertise because that's what they're doing day to day. Lisa, I keep on playing on you because I see you on my screen, but you're an agent. People come to you because you are a professional in your area. You know your area well, right? So do you think, Lisa, that gives you the credibility to give advice about, oh yeah, like in this neighborhood, I saw a house trade for, 10% more than what you're buying it for. So I think it's a good deal. Like, do people come up and say that to you?
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. So why wouldn't you do the same thing as an investor, right? So let me give you a case study here, right? So this is actually my very first deal. And I love this picture because the mailbox looks nicer than the house. But don't focus on that, focus on the house. This is my very first house. I remember resources wise, I had little money. I was making, my base salary was like 42K a year at Oracle. And I had little time. I was working, just trying to get my career started. But I did have some knowledge. I had taken a real estate course and I had gotten that baseline knowledge. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna jump in, right? And I did research on a market I liked. I was at the time very scared. So I was very risk averse. I thought a recession was coming in 2016 because that was already like a 6-7 year cycle. So I was like, all right, let me look at some data points. Let me look at some numbers here. One of the data points that was very important for me that I looked at was this Fred site. I looked at, okay, what was the median home prices in areas, because I thought a recession was coming, so 2016. I was like, all right, let me look, anything is great in a good time. Let me look at the worst time, right, that happened. And what was the worst time in real estate? 2008, 2009, 2010, right, when everything crashed. So I looked at those home prices and I looked at the median home price and bookmarked this, guys. Fred, that's stlouisfed.org. Great data sources for a lot of things, right? So I use this for a lot of stuff. But you can look here. Okay, so the beginning here, I don't know if you can read that. Okay, you 120.77. So per unit, 2007, that was the median home price in Dallas, Texas, in the MSA there. And at the end of the recession, what was it? 119.72, right? So what that means is basically home prices didn't change at all. It went down like maybe 1%, right? So during a recession, it stayed flat, which you can't say that about like markets like Detroit. You can't say that about markets like even San Francisco, the boom and bust cities, right? That are still reliant on certain industries. And so, so yeah, I mean, I looked at that. I was very risk averse. I was like, you know what, okay, if I'm going to invest in my very first deal, I want to make sure that even if it's a recession, it cash flows, but also that the market itself stays flat, right? And that way I can at least move my money around. And so, because as I remember those days at Oracle, yeah, she was a coworker of mine, didn't make a lot of money there. Yeah, it was great. Another part of the criteria was, building like a team, right? So my aunt was an agent out in Dallas. She's out in North Dallas. This deal was actually in East Dallas. But it gave me more confidence that I actually had family in that area too. So, people don't mention this a lot, but a great way to identify markets is a competitive advantage that you have in that market, right? Whether that's I've lived there, I know someone that's lived there. I think Brianna, you were mentioning a deal that your friend had done in Orlando or something like that, right? It's like that kind of like that's a competitive advantage, right? That you have over someone else. If I were just to say on a map, I'm gonna go to Wichita, Kansas, I'm gonna invest there. I don't really have a competitive advantage there. I don't know anyone there. I don't have a network there. I don't even know anyone that lives there. I can't even spell Wichita, right? So, essentially, what is the competitive advantage you have as you build up your team? Okay, my aunt lived there. Okay, I feel a little more confident there. I'm already in Orlando looking at it now. Okay, cool, awesome. Yeah, I interviewed probably 7 property managers. Some of the checklists I looked at in my property managers were, all right, like, do they invest themselves? What the rate is, of course, what's the procedure? What do they do if, I actually ask this question all the time is, what would you do if in the middle of the night you get a call about a plumbing issue? What would you guys say? You put it in the chat. What's a good answer, right? If you were to ask that in a property manager, most people would say a good answer is, oh yeah, I would call my property manager. I would call a plumber and they would get it fixed. But a better answer is, I would call the tenant and say, hey, can you reset the water? Hey, can you try snaking it real quick before I send a plumber out? Because you know how much a plumber costs in the middle of the freaking night? Easy. I'll tell you, $565, right? That's an emergency call from a plumber, right? It's freaking expensive, right? Especially if your rent's only $1,400. So that's actually a better answer. So I made a whole spreadsheet, interviewed 7 property managers, nailed it down to 3, interviewed all 3 of those, found the one I actually liked that was a property management company that was investor owned. She had actually scaled her business, scaled her portfolio so big in Dallas that she actually opened her own property management company. Her rates were very competitive. They understood that as an investor, you're also looking out for the bottom line as well. So they were doing things that actually were helping me as an investor, like keep my costs down, versus a lot of property managers are there for, they're running a business. They're just like, all right, like, yeah, just get it done. Whatever the cost, get it done. Right. And so that was great. But still checks and balances. So even though my aunt was the agent, she's like, oh yeah, you probably rinsed it out for this. Love my aunt. I still checked up on it, right? Like, all right, property manager, what do you think I can get for rent? Okay, verified. Okay, great. Now we're cooking with fire. Analyze the deal, right? So I had practiced on hundreds of deals beforehand. I actually knew because I was talking with at the time with turnkey companies, right? Of like, all right, like what, it kind of like a little quick tip here too. Turnkey companies are essentially companies that will buy homes, renovate them, and then sell it to you at not a discount at all, but they'll basically sell you a turnkey property and then they'll manage it too. So I was talking to turnkey companies, and I brought me to this area actually, and I saw they were trying to sell me a deal down the street from this house for 175K, right? Same thing, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And as I was doing my comp practice, right, like practicing on deal analyzers on that deal, I saw this house, and I was like, why is this one only 140K? Right? This is the same kind of house, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square feet. Why is this one 30K cheaper or 25K cheaper? Right? And I was like, all right, that feels like a discount to me. So I remember calling my aunt. I was like, can you put an offer in this house? And she said to me, she said, Calvin, don't you want to look at it first? I'm like, no, just put the offer in. We could always, back out later, right? And that's also another thing I want to point out, guys. Like, just because you guys go under contract does not mean that you have bought the house. It just means that now you have exclusive negotiation rights on that property, right? So, and this is like so crazy for my aunt to think about. Like, don't you want me like to walk it first? I'm like, no, it might be gone tomorrow. Like, just go put the offer in, right? So I put the offer in, got it on a contract. She walked it finally, did the video tour, all that stuff. It looked fun, right? And so, just kind of practicing a lot just helped me understand that once I saw this property, I was like, oh, this is way cheaper than the other property that they're trying to sell me. Like, it's renovated too. I'll just go do this one. So I put down 28K. Rents were $1,400, so they hit that 1% rule at the time, which was great. So I think it was like the 8% cash on cash return, which was awesome. Which Dallas back then you could actually get a little both of equity and cash flow. But more importantly, I asked myself, what's the worst case scenario here? What if I can't rent it out for a couple of months? Am I still going to be cash flow neutral? Is that even realistic? What if there is a recession, right? And rents go down or whatever. Like, am I still going to be okay? And the answer was yes, right? I could still cash flow at about $1,000 a month, right? And so I was like, that's a big drop. That's like almost, that's a 50% drop, right, in rent essentially. And is that really realistic? Probably not, right? So that gave me more confidence to say like, all right, that's great. Now I will say that wasn't always the case. When I got the deal under contract, I was excited for like the first 20 minutes, and then I was like, holy crap, this is real. I'm about to do a deal. And I was like, I'm gonna back out. And I told Jenny, my wife now, but girlfriend at the time, I was like, I'm gonna go back out. And she's like, no, like, you did all the work, go do it. What's the worst thing that can happen? And I did it, and it was one of the best deals. It was a great deal, right? It wasn't the best deal I've ever done, but it was a great deal. More importantly, because it got me in the game. And I sold this property in 2020 for 190K. So I made 50K profit on it on my original 28K invested. And I'm not gonna lie, I still kick myself for selling it. I don't know why I did. It was kind of like, I looked back at the comps actually, yesterday, and I was kind of sad. I was like, oh, it's my first property. I sold it. It's kind of like sentimental, right? But it was a great stepping stone because it got me in the game of like understanding how to actually do stuff. And the feeling I got was that actually wasn't that hard. That wasn't that bad, because I practice, and the more you practice, the better you're more confident you feel. The more you practice jujitsu, the more confident you feel about something on the mat, versus the first time you're on the mat, you're probably really, really scared. I've never done jujitsu, but I can imagine if I'm ever on the mat for the first time, I'm probably tapping out in like 20 seconds. So that's number one, guys, is just educate yourself. Number two is buy right? So it's not just about going on Zillow, buying the first property you see, right? Like, if it was that easy, then everyone would freaking do it, right? And I feel like that's common sense, but I see that happen all the time. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna become a real estate investor. Oh, I bought the first deal on Zillow. Don't do that, right? What I say is don't buy retail, right? So Lisa, your clients, they probably buy retail because it's 90% emotion, 10% logic, right? As an investor, you're there to you're there to make some money, right? So buy with some value built in. And so a quick rule of thumb you could do, right, as a quick, quick value to say that if this is a good deal or not, is you're only gonna say, all right, can I buy this deal for less than 70% or less of what the after repair value is, right? So after repair value, right, means like, all right, if this deal, it's maybe in rough shape right now, but if I update it, it might be worth, 300K or 380K, right? Can I buy it for less than 70%? So can I buy it for 260K? Like, is that even an option, right? That's a quick way to say maybe you have some equity built in, because what that means is if you're buying at a 70% discount of what it's going to be worth, right? Because you see comps like that already, then really you have 30% spread to play with. That means maybe you put 10% of that to renovations, but then you have 20% spread on that, right? So it at least gives you a buffer, versus what I've seen a lot is like people will buy retail where you basically buy at 100% ARV, or maybe you buy 99% ARV, but you're not building that much equity that way, right? So what I would say is like, all right, can you build some equity by doing that deal? So quick rule of thumb, 70% after repair value. The formula is very easy. Look at what the after repair value can be, and then buy it for, times that by 0.7. And is that even the same stratosphere of, what they would take? All right, limiting belief cell. I hear this all the time. Calvin, I don't have any money. I don't have the time to do this. I don't know how to do this. Okay, fair. You can't have none of these, right? You just need one though. You can't have none. You definitely need one. You have two, even better. If you have three, rock and roll, right? But you can't have none, right? So first, if you have time and nothing else, guess what? You can spend time researching, You can find sellers in distress, in financial hardship, that just had a debt, that just went through a divorce. You can talk to divorce attorneys. You can look up obituaries, right? You can send them handwritten cards. Me and Jenna used to literally go to Costco. We'd get all the yellow pads, right? We actually would spend time. I had carpal tunnel. She actually took me off that because my handwriting sucks. But we'd actually send out letters. Door knocking. If you're local, right? You can door knock. Jenny and I drove for dollars all the time, right? Our vacations would be going to Dallas and driving neighborhoods, or going to San Antonio, driving neighborhoods, and she'd be in the passenger side and I'd be driving, and she just is writing down deals like, all right, that one has boarded up windows. Okay, that's a good target. Oh, that one has overgrown weeds. Okay, that's a good target, right? And then just finding them. And guys, the internet is some crazy stuff. You literally can find information about anyone and everyone on there, right? So that's what we did. We would literally just find the owner of that property and find their phone number and just say, hey, throwing it out there. If you ever sell, just let us know. We would love to buy it. And that's it. So don't tell me you don't have knowledge or capital, you can't do stuff. You have time, you can do stuff. Anyone can write a card, as long as you guys all probably have better handwriting than I do, right? So I guarantee you guys can do that too. All right, maybe I have knowledge, right? But no capital or time. Okay, well, then guess what? Even knowledge, and you can negotiate good deals using creative financing options, creating win-win situations that normal investors didn't even know was an option. Maybe you can be creative on how you can find off-market deals or structure creative financing deals and things like that. So if you have knowledge, right, you can get very, very far as well. And I'll show you an example of that as well. Capital, that's probably the easiest one. If you have capital, you can do anything, right? You can pay wholesalers, you can pay agents, the commissions to do the hard work for you. You can pay businesses, right? To like Marge posted, note card cafe for cards and postcards, right? To do it for you. You can pay other organizations to write. They're literally companies that all they do is they have machines that look like handwriting from human beings, right? That write you cards. I get them all the time, right? And they work, right? Sometimes I'm like, oh man, what's this property? I got this guy over here. Maybe I'll sell it to that guy. Maybe I'll just get his phone number and ask for it. So, and what you're doing is you might not get a lot of responses, but the people that need to sell will call you, right? Especially in this market right now, people most likely don't need to sell because they locked in a 3% rate and it's awesome and it's great. But guess what? People are still selling. You know why? Because they need to sell. I've done 2 deals this month and both of them need to sell. One deal is, her mom passed away, had a reverse mortgage, didn't tell her kids, went to probate because she didn't have it in trust, and now her kids are paying, a reverse mortgage on it every month that doesn't even have a job. And yeah, it sucks, right? So you're helping out those situations as well. So there are definitely ways to do that. So example of that, here's one that is a $0 down money case study, right? And I just want to point out something that my mentor showed me. Like, you can AI furniture in listings, and look how awesome that looks. That looks so nice now in there. Doesn't look that nice, but with good decor, it looks so much nicer. So what you can do, direct to seller, right? So this is the best type of deals if you have the time and the knowledge to do so. So different ways you can do it. There's a sniper approach, there's a shotgun approach, right? So sniper approach, maybe you're targeting certain type of people, and your messaging is also for those type of people, right? So the 4 Ds, death, divorce, distress, and disaster. Those are why people may need to sell, right? That's a sniper approach. Shotgun approach is just, you blast out as many messages out there and just go volume and hope it sticks. Both are great, right? Your target messaging, depending on what your end goal is, they're both great. How you can do that: direct mail. Here's a letter that we used to use as well. I think pictures are always nice, especially pictures of you and a spouse, or you and a dog, a puppy, a baby, borrow a nephew, borrow a niece, do a cute little picture, right? It just helps to show that you are a real person. Saying it out, texting. Watch out, guys, a lot of regulations around texting nowadays, but if you do it, directly, each and every single one, copy paste, but like change the verbiage on it, then you can still do it. Rings voicemails, a great way too, where, I don't know if you guys have ever gotten those voicemails where your phone rings for a second and it stops, and then you have a voicemail saying, hey, I'm Calvin, if you ever looking to sell your house, I'm here for you. Maybe not, but that's kind of voicemail, what ringless voicemails are. But if you're gonna do this stuff, just be consistent about it. yeah, you may not get, I think we were sending like thousands of letters out and we get like two responses, maybe both of them were go F off, but then you get one that's like, hey, maybe I'll keep you in touch, right? And that's all you need is that one. And is that legal? Brandon says it's annoying the voicemail thing. State by state, there's definitely a lot. I think nowadays there's a lot more regulations around ringless voicemails. Same with texting. So right now I think it's actually a little more regulated than it used to be. About how many calls you get to get one response. So we never did calls, like cold calls. People do that. We never did. Ringless voicemails, we got a lot of responses from. I think we had like a list of 10,000 and I think we got like 100. So it's like we got a 1% response rate there. Same with texting. I think 1,000, about a 1% as well, response rate. Actually, response rate in texting was a little bit more, but seriously, it was around that 1%, right? Like we get a lot of like F-offs. We got a lot of funny responses. If you ever want to have a nice laugh, you can definitely do it. I was actually looking back at some of the responses we were getting and yeah, there's some inappropriate jokes on there for sure. But like, it's funny. But you get that one, it's serious, right? And that's all you need. And that's how we actually found this deal right here. We found it from just a text campaign. So I had VAs basically just texting out. We do like 10 texts a day, right? Nothing crazy. 10 texts a day, we're doing that for a while, right? And finally had one. And our texting was super easy. It was, hi, Mr. Blank. What price would you sell XYZ address for? That was it. And we actually we tested this a lot because in the South where this property is, people don't like to be called by the first name. You get a lot more response rate from calling them Mr. and Mrs. So that was kind of a funny little thing that you changed in your verbiage that changes a lot. And so yeah, we just said that. He said, yeah, I'll sell this for $875K. And we did the numbers at the back end, and I was like, okay, yeah, I mean, I'm interested. Would you be able to jump on a phone call with me, right? And we did. I talked to him. We chatted through it. Understood that a tornado had hit one of the buildings. He had inherited this from his father. He had no idea how to renovate multifamily. He actually was sitting for 4 years, basically unrented. So he just wanted to get out, right? So he's never in a situation. And so we did agree on $875K. But the kicker on this is, how do you do $0 down on this? Well, we also need a $400K rehab cost. So what we did is we did a first position commercial loan, which was $375K for the purchase. So they put this loan gave us $375K for the purchase and 100% of the funds for the rehab. Awesome. Second position, we actually negotiated with them a seller financing for $437.5K. And this was a tough negotiation, right? This is where the knowledge definitely comes into play of we basically said, hey, this has been tornado hit. Like this building, the blue one on the right-hand side, you can't really see it, but it basically had no roof or windows, right? And it was all just bones inside. And I was like, hey, man, like I can't get normal financing with this. No one will finance this, dude. And they're like, okay, what do you propose? I'm like, I'm going to need you to carry the note on this. And they're like, okay. And here's another tip on negotiations. You never get the number first, right? And they're like, okay, well, we can do 50% of the note. And I was like, okay, sounds good. And we negotiated a 4% rate on that on a 25-year AM on a 15-year term. It was great. It was great. I'm kind of we actually refi this year too, but it was a great rate back then. Like 25-year AM, 15-year term is crazy. And then for the remaining 100K, we brought in another capital partner on 100K. So I actually put up $0 on this deal, right? And the ARV was 1.8 million, right? So do the math. 1.275 million on 1.8 at the full burr, right? You can get all your money out that way. And we did just refi this earlier this year, and yeah, and got an appraisal for I think 1.72 million, and got cleared out all the other debt on it. So again, $0 down type of deal. That's how you can do it, but you can't do this deal unless you know at least some kind of knowledge and have some time. It actually didn't spend. I didn't have to spend a lot of time on this one, but you definitely had to have the knowledge on it, right? So no excuses on no capital, guys. All right, principle number 3, guys. Define. Yeah.
I know that you found them by text campaign, but how did you find their number in the first place?
Ooh, that's a great question. Okay, so how much time we got? All right, yeah, we got time for this. Okay, cool. So how we find numbers? A couple ways. So you at least need an address, right?
Mm.
So an address is all you really need. So on this one, we were looking at all the multifamily. We here's a very cheap way to do it, right? So there's tools out there like Bionumie. There's things like that out there that you can basically get free trials on. So we got a free trial on it, and we just downloaded all the addresses of multifamily in this city, right? And we got all that, right? And then essentially what we did was we said, all right, let's go find, how do we find it? So then you can go to a couple ways. One is you can actually go on the Secretary of State, or you go to the county website on property taxes, right? And you look up the address, and on there it'll typically say who's the owner, right? So step one there. So on most residential, most owners have their actual name on there, right? And then what you can do is you can go on fastpeoplesearch.com, right? And you type in the name and the address, right? And then they'll give you all the different addresses or all the different numbers you can have. So let me see here. Let's do a quick example. All right, fastpeoplesearch.com. I was gonna put your name, Jem. I'm not gonna do that. Let's just say, I don't know, let's say.
Fine, you can try.
All right, say Jen Chu, and let's say San Francisco.
Let's see if it works.
No, that's not you. You're not 50.
Nope.
No, 47, 70, 64, 38, 43. Okay, you might have a common name. Let's go Jennifer. Let's go Jennifer Chu. How about that?
Yeah, it should be Jennifer Chu.
Okay, let's go Jennifer Chu. All right. Island. Give me an address that you have lived at.
We'll say 45 Lansing, Lansing.
Okay. Lansing Street. Okay. In San Francisco.
Yeah.
Let's see if that comes up. Oh shit, Brooklyn.
Can't find me.
Oh wow. Okay, maybe you're doing a really good job. Okay. So either way, right? Like, so if you were on here, you can see here that you have numbers on here too. And not all these numbers are right, but one of these numbers are. Right? And it's crazy. It even has addresses like that and all that stuff. So you can find anyone and everyone that you ever wanted to on here. I'm like, no way you can't find you, bro. I guess so. You did a good job, Jennifer. Oh, that might be you here.
Oh, wait, I'm not 33.
Oh, okay, JK. So anyways, so that's the way to do it, right? Is you look at that way. You go on the property tax county website, look up the address. It'll actually say that, that owner's name, and then you look them up on here with that, and then that's how you find the number and stuff. And you even have their address too, and so you get some of the cards that way. Now, the opposite part of that too, the harder part then is, okay, they have it under a trust or an LLC. And now we get a little more complicated. So if they have a trust or an LLC, then you got to do a couple of things. One is then you can look at the Secretary of State and the LLC. And some Secretaries of State, you can actually look at the LLC structure. They'll actually have the actual members on there. And then you do the same thing here. If you can't, then probably a little harder. A trust, good luck. You're not going to break that. So, you have a trust. They know what the hell they're doing, right? So, yeah, it's going to be harder to find there. But you want the lower hanging fruit anyway, so you probably want the ones that are just under your name. And this guy in this deal, he had it under his freaking name, right? So it was super easy to find him, and literally texted, called, and all that stuff. So that's why we found this one.
Nice, thanks. So sending 10 texts is not as easy as it just sending 10 regular texts.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. All right. So, principle number 3 is defining multiple exit strategies, right? So again, like, don't be like the 90% of investors that look at the deal and say, all right, it's that I'm gonna do a short-term rental, right? And that's it, but not looking at the downside potential, right? So I always like tell people, like, look at the downside, meaning that, okay, look at multiple exit strategies, right? And if you have multiple exit strategies that you are still okay on, then that's great, right? Let's say you're looking at a short-term rental, it's great, right? But as a long-term rental, does it work as well? So maybe look as work as a midterm rental. Just have that backup because we had our house here in California, like, we were doing short-term rentals, but then our city was like, hey, actually we changed our ordinance, so you can't do short-term rentals anymore. And all of a sudden, oh my God, that changes everything. But luckily, we were able to do midterm rentals in there instead, right? And that's what helps. So again, just having like multiple levels of security, right? Just helps mitigate your risk and de-risk the deal of like all that stuff. So here's a deal I've talked about in the past, but deal that I did in San Antonio, got a deal from a long-term relationship I had with an agent, off market, older gentleman. They were asking 110K, got her under contract for 90K. Was able to do our inspection period, right, and negotiated the price because there were some plumbing issues and stuff like that. So, and knowing that he mentally had already spent his money on another house, I knew that he was okay, right, and wanted to actually, he needed to get out of this house. So was able to negotiate price down to 72.5. Rehabbed it. Not all rainbows and butterflies, right? My contractor did go missing. He actually ended up getting deported on this one, but again, having the right systems in place, we owned all the material, right? We had a payment schedule as well for our contractors, meaning that you didn't pay them the whole thing, you pay them in draws, right? So once they finish out one part of the contract, property manager can go in there, check it off, and then we release payment. So luckily we didn't lose that much money from him going missing, just lost a lot of time. And then basically, what we call bird this deal, where we rehabbed it, right? So all in costs was 72K of buying it, cost 25K to rehab it, all in for 97K. Got appraised at 155K, so got 116K back, which is, again, my math is not great, but I think it's more than 97K, right? So I was able to make a little bit of profit there. We were renting out long term for $1,200. Expenses were about $1,044 a month, including our mortgage. So we're cash flowing about $156 a month. So again, now we have a cash flowing asset and all of our original capital back, right? And that allowed us to do it again and use the same capital, like what we call recycling our money. But the cool part is that, then you can kind of see like, all right, well, what's the best use of this property? And for us, I was like, you know what, like, it's near a military base. I think I could actually Airbnb this, right? And so did it again, got a new appraisal at that point, 185K, got 22K back. Use that 22K to renovate the bathroom, do some landscaping, buy furniture, and was able to rent it out for 3 to 4K on an Airbnb, right? So our net cash went up to 2 to 3K a month, right? And so again, in this case, like what you do is, I knew that I was willing to take the risk of Airbnb on this because I knew that the worst case scenario, I could go back to long-term renting and I'd be okay with it, right? So same thing, if you're looking at short-term rentals, can you long-term rent it and be okay, right? And if you buy long-term rental, I always find that long-term rentals are the most boring, vanilla kind of deals, but they're the most safest risk-adjusted deals because if you can make a long-term rental work, and it also happens to be in a good area that you can Airbnb, boom, you have multiple exit strategies now that you can maximize your returns on, right? And I think that's super, super cool. So look at all those different strategies, guys. Don't just look at it with one lens. All right, person number 4 should go without saying, but yeah, it should cash flow, right? It should cash flow, right? Because if it cash flows, even if the market takes a hit, guess what? You're able to hold it. You're able to hold it until what happens, guys? Until the market goes back up, right? That's not how a market works. So if you can cash flow it, then you're always gonna be safe, right? So when I say you just always check the numbers, right? So analyzing your deals, adding in reserves for maintenance and capital expenditures. I did not do that on my very first deal for CapEx. I thought that was dumb. I was like, I see a lot of people put like cash flow numbers as like your rent minus your mortgage. That is not cash flow, right? Because guess what? You have maintenance requests. I don't know if any of you guys have owned a place, but there's always some kind of maintenance request. Is sometimes capital expenses, which is like an HVAC breaking or a roof breaking or something happening, right? So I would say like look at the worst case scenario, and if those numbers still work, then you're probably going to be okay, right? So worst case scenario meaning, all right, like what if I can only rent out 50% of the property if it's a duplex? Am I still going to be cash flowing? What if recession hits? Like, am I going to be okay? What if I can't find a tenant for 2 months, right? Let me write that in. Is that going to work still? right? Like just look at the worst case scenario. And you're okay with the worst case scenario, then that gives you a lot more solace that that might be a good deal. So case study here, here's a 52 unit that we closed in December of last year. Again, what we look at strength of investments, right? So one thing was that, yeah, it was very occupied. So 98% occupied. And the rents were well below market, meaning that, there was a lot of room for increasing it. We had an in-house property manager that we can control, right? That, was able to, manage property and actually be there. Good inflation hedge, right? Real estate's always a great inflation hedge, but more importantly, it had really strong terms, right? Seller finance, this is also seller finance, had long-term fixed debt at 4.75%. This is December of last year for 7 years, and we had 18 months of interest only on a 30-year AM schedule, right? So just strong like debt on this as well, because you guys probably hear right now, a lot of people are in trouble because they got short-term debt that is due this year, next year, right? And so short-term debt, they got 2 years ago when rates were 3%, and now it's coming due, and now rates are 7.5%, 8%. Yeah, that's going to change your numbers a lot, right? So the questions I would always ask myself is not just about how strong the investment is, but more is like, all right, how am I going to protect my downside on this? But here's a few questions to ask yourself, guys. Is one, does the cash flow from day one, as is rents, does the cash flow? If it does, okay, then I know I'm always protected because it can always pay for itself. Two, what's a loan on it, right? So this one was a longer term debt loan, right? But is there debt coming due? Right? Did I get a short-term debt on it? And I'm comfortable with that, right? And I know for a fact that right now, a lot of people are struggling because they got the short-term debt and they're scared because, back then it was like, oh yeah, what can go wrong, right? Like, like our rate's going to go double in 1 year or triple in 1 year. And most people would say no, right? That's never happened in the history of history. But guess what? It did. It did happen. Right. But if you follow just the principles of long-term investing, which is just try to get long-term debt on it, maybe you pay an extra 0.5% on your interest, but guess what? You're able to hold that deal and not get knocked out of the game. That's important. So also, is there capital reserves? Right. So, capital reserves meaning that is there extra money just in case, right? You buy a property, you buy short-term rental even, right? Like, okay, I buy a property, but do I have any reserves as well, right? In case something breaks, right? So you might be cash flowing, right? Once you go live, but what if something broke in between that? Do you have reserves, right? To actually manage that and manage that, or maybe you're a tenant, maybe you're renovating right now and you go in the market in December, and because it's a holiday season, no one rents it out, right? Do you have capital reserves to hold you through the holiday season to get to when renters are hot again and people want to move? What's my break-even point? Oh, I love this one. What's my break-even point? Meaning that, okay, well, how low does rent have to go for me to break even? Is it realistic that it goes that low? Right? So just asking yourself, okay, is that break-even point even something that's realistic? Right? If you do that, then, here's a summary of what we're looking at, right? This is we bought this from one for 3.4 million. It's 1.6 down plus rehab. We get all our rents up to market value, then our net operating income goes from 174K to 355K, which gives us a valuation of 5.4 million, right? And that means we can return our capital in 3 to 5 years, right? And give us basically an infinite cash on cash return, because now we have this deal forever, right? And none of our own original capital in it, and then it just cash flows. That's now we're playing with fire, right? But you're protecting your downside all over the place, because day one, it's still cash flowed, right? We still get like, from day one on this one, I think the first month we owned it, we had like 10K of cash flow in 1 month. And we're like, wow, that's sweet, right? I feel very comfortable being able to hold that for the long term, because no matter what, this deal can sustain itself. Even if market goes down, I'm not selling it when the market goes down. I can hold it till market goes back up, right? And I just want to get that into everyone's head. Like if you can do that, then you can cash flow. That's like one of the easiest fundamentals of long-term investing. The cash flows, you can pay for itself forever, right? Until you want to sell that. And if you hold real estate for a long, long time, most likely than not, it's gonna be worth a lot more. So cool. Principle number 5, last one, guys, is just don't over leverage, right? So over leveraging, this means getting into too much bad debt that your income cannot handle, meaning that maybe you got a bunch of deals that just don't cash flow and have heavy vacancy, and now you're just stuck with the mortgage payments as well, right? Don't do deals that my mentor was told me this, and it's always stuck with me. But don't do deals that one deal can knock you out, right? So I've avoided mass deals that I'm personally guaranteeing, because if that one deal goes under, that might knock out everything, right? This whole strategy is about staying in the game for a long time. Like that's what real estate is. Like stay in the game. Don't get knocked out. Don't go in Mike Tyson's corner when you've never done anything and get knocked out right away. That's not that chill, right? So looking back at the last time this happened very badly was 2008, right? People were getting loans like crazy. There was no income verification. People were getting over leveraged. And then guess what happened? Values went down like crazy, right? Like, anyone see The Big Short? Right? That one scene where it always sticks with me is he's at the strip club, and the stripper's like, "Oh yeah, like she's like, what do you mean, like subprime mortgages are going down? I have 4 mortgages." And she's like, he's like, "What? You have 4 condos?" He's like, "No, I have like," she's like, "I got 4 investment properties." I'm like, "Whoa," right? Like, and so like that always stuck with me. Like, oh yeah, like they probably didn't do income checks, right, and all that stuff. And when values went down lower than what the mortgages were left on the loan, people couldn't pay their mortgages every month, and they couldn't rent them out, and they were worth less than what they were paying in the mortgage. So what did people do? They didn't want to sell and write a check at closing, so they just said, "Hey, bank, just take it, whatever," right? Because they couldn't pay the mortgage payments. But I know a lot of people that were able to keep on paying those mortgage payments even when the values went down at that point, past what the mortgage was, and they just held and just held and just held, and it went back and it went back and it went way past what it was even worth at the peak of 2007, and they were just able to stay in the game, right? So if you can stay in the game for a long time, you're gonna be great, right? Those people are very, very happy still that they still own those properties. And even if you put yourself in that position where, some people couldn't, they bought too many properties, and I've seen it, time and time in any market, even in 2001, right, or 2021. If you're able to, take, be able to help them out, right, and get those deals under your belt, you can buy them at a discount and again ride that way back up too. So it's all about staying in the game. Don't get knocked out. So implement, guys, the stair-step approach, which means do a deal, stabilize it, meaning make a cash flow, and then go ahead and do another one, right? And then once you stabilize that and the cash flows and it's all self-sustaining, do another one, maybe a bigger one, right? Just like jujitsu, right? Rihanna, it's like you go, you spar with other blue belts, right? And then you get pretty good at that. You feel comfortable with that. Maybe you go spar with the purple belt now, or I don't know what's next after that, but then you try that, and then you get your butt kicked, and then you just keep on sparring with them until that's normal, right? And then now you're normal. Then you go to a black belt, whatever it is, right? Same thing.
Actually,
you're not gonna go from.
It's kind of like your program. They'll put the white belt with the black belt, and they'll teach them.
Yeah, exactly.
And they'll teach them. Yeah, so it's actually kind of like this.
Yeah,
and
so
then
they don't just it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep, I love it. I love the analogy, right? So just stair-step approach, guys. Stabilize it. Don't go like balls to the wall, right? And like get so over leveraged that you're like, crap, I've done so many deals and I can't stabilize any of them. And then now I have a hurricane of all 5 of these properties now or don't have a tenant. I'm paying a mortgage on them, and that's when you can get in trouble. Right. So just pro tip there. Another thing there, just keep sufficient cash reserves to cover unexpected expenses, right? So buffer, I usually say, see if you can have 3 to 6 months of reserves, right, of your mortgage payment. That's plenty safe enough, right? And that doesn't mean like in that bank account, but like just have that cash reserves in your own like account. Even with the 401k, your stock account, whole life cash insurance, whatever it is that you can draw from just in case something happens. Right. And that was my first deal, not mistake, right? Because we don't use that word, learnings, right? So my very first deal, my awesome mailbox here, I did not underwrite in my budget for capital expenditures. Dallas, I don't know if anyone has been to Dallas before, but it's freaking hot there, right? And people love to just blast their AC 24/7. And guess what happened to my HVAC? It went out the first year. So all that really cool cash flow I thought I had, it all went to a brand new HVAC system, right? But luckily, since it was my first deal, I still had reserves, right? And it taught me a valuable lesson to underwrite for capital expenses too, because it may not happen in year 1. Nothing may happen in year 2. nothing may happen in year 3, but eventually something will happen because it's real estate. A storm might come through, your roof might get too old, you know, your freaking plumbing might leak. Something always happens, right? And that if you underwrite for it, then you're prepared, right? Because your own expectations are prepared for it versus, oh, I was not expecting that, right? I don't want anyone that I've ever worked with or talked to and be like, oh my God, what the heck did that come from? Like, no, underwrite for it that way that you know you're prepared for it and it's part of real estate. So, cool guys. All right, so that's the 5 principles, guys. Just follow those 5. Bonus 1, just take action, right, guys? It is scary until you do it, and then it's not, right? Like my favorite quote that I've ever had was the only difference between you, the people in the chairs and the people on stage is that they took action. That's it. So my favorite quote is from one of our members, Tyler Dixon, our very first retreat, and it's always stuck with me because it's so true. I am not the smartest guy in the room ever, right? I'm not a smart dude. I was like a C student, B student, right? But I always was good at taking action and learning from mistakes and always picking myself back up, right? And that's it, guys. You will make mistakes. Hopefully not as big as mine, but all you gotta do is learn from those mistakes. And eventually you'll look back and say, oh, I was so silly that I was scared to even do that. And Sarab, you asked, what does underwriting mean? Underwriting just means that you're analyzing the deal, right? Hopefully you have a model. If you don't, let me know. But underwriting just means like looking at your actual analyzer, your model, and saying like, all right, like, you know, putting in those numbers of saying like, I'm putting in a capital expenditure reserve every year, even though I might not need it that year, I'm putting it in because over a 5-year period, something's gonna happen. So that's what it means, Rob.
Thank you.
Yep, of course. Cool. So again, how to work with us. So Zen Coaches University is our passion income, me and my wife. You know, we always look at every human being is different. You know, every human being wants to use real estate for a different aspect in their lives, what they're trying to get to. Again, the outcome is not real estate. The outcome is not money. The outcome is designing a lifestyle that you're proud of at the end of your life. And so what we do is we just want to help you create a game plan around your life and leverage real estate, right, to design that life, to get your time and energy back so that you can go and make a bigger impact on this world, whether it be for Jen, speaking and helping people organize their life better with their closets or whatever, right? Organizing communities like Sip and Swap. I think it's amazing, right? Like that's how, you know, we can get through this together is, you know, with awesome people, right? And, you know, we want to hold your hand through these deals so that, you know, you have those confidence that you can move the needle forward. So if you want to work with us or learn more, you can scan this QR code, talk to our team. But you follow us on Instagram too. If you want to get in contact with me, just DM me. I'm on Instagram more than Jenny would like me to be on. So slide. I'm always happy to answer any question that you guys have. You can also go to our website to learn more, zencoachuniversity.com. And yeah, happy to answer any questions. Type in a 1 if this was valuable. Type in a 2 if you're like, this is trash. Don't type a 2, but you know, type a 1 in if that was valuable. All right, guys. Well, if there's any other questions, just slide in my DMs. Happy to answer, right? And other than that, guys, have an amazing night. I'm gonna get some dinner. I'll catch you guys another time. Peace.